was laughing when I killed my mother.
Why'd you get rid of that shirt?
It had pieces of my mother's brain stuck to it.
This is 15-year-old Zachary Davis. His interrogation had detectives, judges, and even psychiatrists debate his state of mind. Was he a depressed, schizophrenic child with profound but unaddressed issues? Or was he a cold-blooded serial killer, evil to the core and completely irredeemable?
I was kind of expecting the fires and kill him. I killed Josh with a sledgehammer too.
Let's delve deep into one of the most shocking police interrogations ever recorded and see if we can understand Zachary's creepy murder motive by reading between the lines. Trigger warning, the following video discusses extreme violence, mental health issues in teens, suicidal thoughts, and death. Watch on at your own risk. Today's case begins in the 60,000 people town of Hendersonville, Tennessee. Hendersonville was once home to the famous singers Johnny Cash, June Carter Cash, and Roy Orbison. Today, it's a great, peaceful alternative to busy cities like Nashville. Of course, that might not be what a teenager wants, but in the case of Zachary Davis, quietude was all he was seeking. Zachary was born in 1997 in a different part of Tennessee, to parents Melanie and Chris. He grew up with his brother Josh, who was 3 years older than him, and a pair of loving parents. It was a tightly knit family who enjoyed lots of activities together. But early on, it became clear that Zach wasn't like Josh, boyish, outgoing, and up for any weekend activity. Zach was pretty quiet. He didn't seem to make friends at school or talk about his feelings with his family. And in 2007, any mental issues Zach might have already had reached unprecedented highs. His dad, Chris, succumbed to Lou Gehrig's disease. This is a type of sclerosis, a progressive nervous system disease that affects nerve cells in the brain and spinal cord, causing loss of muscle control. Sadly, no cause or cure is known for this fatal disease. The moment Chris was diagnosed with it, he knew he would never see his sons grow up. Needless to say, Josh and Melanie were affected too. But Zach? Well, he went down a truly dark rabbit hole. No one could get through to him. When Melanie realized Zach was not okay, she took him to see a psychiatrist called Dr. Bradley Freeman at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. The psychiatrist noted that Zach certainly did suffer from some kind of mental defect. Zach told Bradley that he could hear voices, specifically the voice of his father talking to him at night. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia and depressive disorder. This is an extremely rare diagnosis for a 9-year-old. Depression on its own is usual for a child grieving a parent, but in most cases, there are 3 clear phases to bereavement: numbness, depression, and recovery. Sadly, Zach never made it to the recovery phase. Chris's mother blames Melanie for it. As she explained during Zach's trial, Melanie pulled him out of therapy after just 4 sessions. If he continued therapy, this would not have happened. In 2008, Melanie took her 2 sons and moved to Gallatin, Sumner County. Melanie was seeking a fresh start. She thought it would be good for Josh and Zach to see a different house, a different scenery, and a different school. 2007 had been a very tough year for the 3 of them, and having fewer reminders of it would be better. But Zach's mental health was plummeting fast. He barely spoke to his brother anymore, and he was his only friend. So Melanie took him to a few other therapists in Sumner County.
Have you ever had to see a doctor for anything as far as having problems with thinking about things or anything? I saw a therapist shortly after I wasn't a very long duration of time. What was that about? Who wanted to see a therapist? My mother. She did? Okay, so it was just a couple.
Zach was once again diagnosed with depressive disorder. This time, psychosis was also noted. This is a symptom associated with schizophrenia. Up until the moment Zach would become a killer, he had meetings with therapists and school counselors on a pretty regular basis. But absolutely no one saw him capable of killing his mother with a sledgehammer and setting fire to the house in the hope of killing his brother too. In the very early hours of August 10th, 2012, someone called 911 in a panic. It was Josh. His house was on fire. His mother had been to death, and his little brother was missing. When emergency services arrived, the first priority was to stop the fire. Everyone assumed it had been a terrible accident, and Melanie had succumbed to the flames or got suffocated by the smoke. But then officers stepped inside the house and examined Melanie's body. Her head was practically smashed in. The murder weapon, a sledgehammer from the worst of horror movies, was still there, left leaning against her bedroom door. Melanie had been hit 12 times with almost superhuman strength. Someone really wanted her dead. It was a truly terrible sight, something that would scar Josh for life. Josh was asleep when Melanie was killed and the house caught fire. He was woken up by the smoke alarm.
Woke up around, I'm not sure what time it is, the thing was going off. And, at first I didn't know what it was. I thought it was like a sound in my room. And I figured I was a fire alarm. I was running around and I was looking for my brother upstairs in his room. He wasn't in there and I saw the fire was started in there. So I ran down the stairs to get my mom and the door was locked. So I had to kick the door in to get in there. And then I was explored on the bed.
Putting two and two together, the police constructed a dark scenario. Could Zachary have been responsible for this? 5 miles away from their home, Zach was found walking down a town road, drinking from a can of Pepsi and attempting to leave town. He was immediately arrested. But even as he entered the interrogation room, the detectives weren't expecting to hear what they did.
This is the sheriff's office, and what we'd like to do is talk to you about something happened at your house, and that's what we kind of want to talk to you about. You want to go ahead and talk to us about what happened tonight?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. If you do, just Zach, what I want to do is make sure you understand that this is a waiver, right? Saying you're waiving your rights. What I'd like to do is make sure you can read and write. If you would, read that last paragraph out loud.
As soon as Zach opened his mouth to read the statement, the detective noticed something was off. 15-year-olds don't normally talk like this.
I've read this statement of my rights and understand what my rights are.
Yeah, creepy to say the least. But this was also a defining moment for the interrogation, as Zach, still underage, agreed to talk to the cop without a lawyer or an adult present. Throughout the whole interrogation, he showed zero emotion and seemed to be completely emotionally detached, regardless of the question.
You've never been in any trouble, have you?
No, sure.
So, no trouble in school, nothing like that?
No, sure.
The detective started asking himself, as early as the first minute of the interrogation, was Zach's strange tone the result of mental illness, perhaps schizophrenia? Or was this an act, something Zach was trying to be in front of the cop? To get an answer, the detective brought up something he already knew about. Of course, while Zach was being arrested, the other investigators dug up all the information they could get on him. That's when they found out about his father's death and about the downward spiral he'd been on ever since.
I understand that your father had passed away.
Yes, sir.
How did he pass away?
He died from Carrick's disease.
Pretty rough on you, wasn't it?
No, sure.
Didn't bother you?
No, sure.
I was told that it bothered you. That you were upset about your dad. Is that not true?
No, sure.
So it is true?
No, sure.
Okay.
By now, the detective already knew Zach was lying. Josh, their grandparents, and whoever knew Zach remembered all too well. Zach was devastated by his father's death. Not only did it bother him, it destroyed his mental health for life. So why was Zach hiding this?
Something went on at your house today, and I just kind of like you to kind of tell us what happened.
I killed my mom in her sleep with a sledgehammer.
Oh, okay. So he was honest about that. Zach was brutally honest and almost proud of his action. It was almost as if he was waiting for the detective to ask him that question. He took on a position in everything.
I killed my mom in her sleep with a sledgehammer.
The detective surely wasn't expecting a straightforward confession like that, especially after Zach was lying about not being affected by Chris's death. However, when it came to his murder motive, it would be a carousel. Zach would give several reasons, withhold more information from the cop, then lie, and then withhold some more information. Then switch his story a dozen times.
Is there a reason why you did that?
Yes, sir.
Well, can you tell me why?
No, sir.
You can't tell me why? Sure.
Is it a reason you don't know why you did it, or you just don't want to tell?
I didn't know why I did it. Just not tell.
Okay.
Imagine how frustrating it is to hear that. The detective's only option was to talk about facts, clear out what he could.
Did you set the house on fire too?
I tried to. I don't know if it actually got the whole house on fire though.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, it did. I mean, a little bit, I think, but not bad or anything.
Notice how the detective still hasn't asked Zach about his brother yet. At this point, he was still trying to understand why Zach butchered his mother.
Have you been having problems with your mom?
Not sure.
Then, where's the motive? Here's what's extra creepy. The investigators went through the many texts between Zach and Melanie. It turns out, Zach did show emotion. Melanie, hey, could the three of us have dinner together when I get home? Maybe Chinese? Good morning, sweet child. I hope you slept well. Zach, sorry, I was asleep. Didn't it expire on the 24th? What sort of cold-blooded murderer sends his victim heart emojis?
We found a book on a notepad that was on you that said some things in there. Is that notepad yours that we found? It talks about your mom and about.
Yes, sure.
And that's what's so important about this. I mean, we want to understand what. Like I said, you don't have to tell us if you don't want to. I mean, but we want to understand. What happened.
You might wonder why the detective is so friendly to a boy who just smashed his mother's head in. Well, it's a known tactic called the read technique. The detective makes the suspect feel comfortable so that they trust him and open up. Confrontation is saved for later. In the case of Zachary, this seems quite mandatory. He already is a notoriously quiet person that keeps to himself and communicates nothing. If he felt threatened in any way by the cop or the idea of a life sentence, there was a strong chance he wouldn't have said anything at all.
Would you feel more comfortable if there was just one person in the room?
I don't mind having two people here.
Okay.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Meanwhile, the detectives looked at Melanie's life. She was a pretty busy person. She worked as a paralegal, oftentimes long hours, and then in her spare time, she trained hard as a triathlete. In the eyes of Josh, she was also a good mom, always staying in contact with her boys and making sure they had everything they needed. But from Zach's point of view, she needed to spend more time with them. However, this truth would come to light much later. On the day of the murder, Melanie started her day by taking Josh to the orthodontist. She texted Zach, "Hey, sweetie, I just took Josh to the orthodontist. We'll be back hopefully soon. We can see Born or Campaign today. I want to see both." Her very last message was sent to her killer. Okay, heart. It's truly heartbreaking to think that Melanie never knew how much hatred her son bore for her.
What's Zach doing when you get home?
I think she's playing Xbox. We kind of keep to ourselves, I guess.
Okay, so you and Zach don't have a good relationship?
Well, no, we do. It's just like I don't know. Like he just kind of, stays to himself. He's kind of a quiet person, I guess.
Have you been having any problems? I mean,
he's always been kind of like quiet. I guess odd.
Josh found it hard to admit that his brother is odd. The two were as close as they could be under the circumstances. They often played video games together and watched movies in the evening together with Melanie. Josh was Zach's closest friend, and Josh was fiercely defensive of him whenever Zach got into social trouble at school.
He was like like a piece of paper, like how you roll up a thing of paper. Mm-hmm. He was kind of hitting him with that. Hitting Zach with it? Yeah, and I told him to keep this stop, and he went up there and did it again.
Josh would get into fights with whoever bullied his little brother. But Josh also had a life of his own and friends outside the family house. It's strange then that Josh was the center of Zach's world, and yet he talked about him this way.
What kind of person is your brother?
Your typical male teenager.
Typical male teenager. You two get along pretty good?
Sometimes.
Stating the obvious again, but what sort of 15-year-old refers to his big brother as your typical male teenager? What's more, the investigators revealed dozens of friendly text messages between the two. Here's one instance. Zach's birthday was coming up and Josh wanted to invite his friend Ryan to join the party, but Zach said he wanted to celebrate his birthday alone, so his big brother texted him, "If you don't want Ryan to come over, I can tell him not to. I want you to have your birthday the way you want it, and I especially want you to be happy on your birthday." Heart. Now, that's a really nice message. Both boys talked to each other in a friendly tone, and both used heart emojis and wrote "I love you" to each other. Yep, they were close, but Zach acted like they weren't. By the time he was interrogating him, the detective knew this. He also knew that Zach only called to his mother or brother. He pressed him about it, hoping to get to the bottom of the murder motive.
When you talk to people on the phone, who do you talk to? I mean, do you have friends you chat with or anything like that?
No, sir. I usually only talk to my mother and my brother on my phone.
So you don't have any friends other than your mother and your brother that you talk to?
No, sir.
But your brother lives there with you too, right? That's the only person who lives with you?
Yes, sir.
Did you do anything to him?
No, sir. I was kind of expecting the fire to kill him.
Oh, you were? Okay.
How does this make any sense? Why would Zach kill his two best friends? His only friends? By now, Zachary confirmed murder and attempted murder. Then he blatantly admitted to premeditated murder.
When you get home and your mom goes to bed at 9, where are you and what are you doing in the house? Are you in the house?
I was in my room already planning everything.
You were in your bedroom or in the room where the fire was started?
The room where the fire was started.
What do you call that room?
What do you call it? Game room.
Game room? So you're in the game room planning everything?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Zach described how it only took him a few minutes to come up with the plan, but that he waited for hours to make sure Melanie and Josh were asleep.
I just waited and then checked on them.
Just checked on them, opened the door, looked at them.
Yes, sir. I killed her at around 11 p.m., I think. And I think she went to sleep at around 9 o'clock.
No matter how gruesome the questions got, Zach continued to show no emotion.
How many times did you hit her with the sledgehammer?
I don't know.
I mean, any estimation?
I'd say at least 12.
12 times. Where did you hit her at on her body?
Around the head area.
And here's a dark twist.
Did you touch her anywhere else?
No, sir.
Have you thought about touching her anywhere else?
No, sir.
Now, this is unconfirmed, but usually if a detective asks this, it's because the autopsy showed something. Did Zachary have a profound Oedipus complex? Given that Josh was asked the same question, the autopsy theory is pretty likely.
When you went in the bedroom, at any time did you touch your mom?
Yeah, Summer County.
When you went in that room?
No, I don't think so. Like, I kind of, no.
He witnessed the altercation.
Like, I ran in and because then I saw her. And that freaked me out.
Here's another dark twist. Zach might have planned the murder only a few hours ahead, but he'd wanted to kill his mom for years.
When did you think about doing this? I mean, when did this pop into your head as far as killing your mom?
Several years ago.
Had you told anybody about it?
No, sir.
Still, the detective couldn't get any proof that Zach hated his mom.
Was she a pretty good mom or?
She wasn't very good mom. She wasn't very good. I don't know.
Slowly but surely, the detective was uncovering a fact about Zachary. He was obsessed with serial killers. Here's what Zachary wrote in January 2012. After reading dozens of news reports about killers, I believe I've found several consistent reasons why most killers are caught within a year. They rely too much on civilization. Most killers hide out in heavy populated areas or easily accessible areas. They don't migrate to other areas after several kills in a row. This makes the police in their area more alert and the citizens more cautious. Most rely too much on firearms or other weapons that produce loud noises. This will attract unwanted attention to their location. Did you notice how this is written in the same monotonous, almost encyclopedia-like style? This was the persona Zach wanted to take. It wasn't the same tone he used when he spoke to his family. Clearly, Zachary was delusional. He thought he could outsmart all the serial killers that had been caught and escape justice after killing his own family. He was caught 4 hours after his murder without a plan to escape. Just walking out of town without a phone or money is not really a plan. Could this demonstrate his schizophrenia? Toward the end of the interrogation, the detective tried to understand if Zachary had motives for killing Josh too.
Were you provoked by your brother?
No, sure.
Were you provoked by your mother?
No, sure.
The more he was confronted with his motive, the more he struggled to give a straight answer.
You didn't try to talk to anybody about this?
No, sure.
Why not? I mean, did this not bother you? Or
Yeah, sure.
it did bother you?
No, sure.
Oh, it did bother you?
Yeah, you can hear how the detective wasn't even trying to sound like he believed Zach. The running theory goes as follows. Zachary was clearly affectionate toward his mother and his brother before the murder, but in his journals and notes, he showed a cold, detached serial killer tone. He used the same tone with the cop. So Zachary wanted to be a serial killer. This was all an act. He wanted to look evil and cold-hearted, and perhaps this came as a coping mechanism when his father died. It was easier to cut off all emotional attachment than to feel the full power of grief and loss.
I mean, was there any problems between you and him, or him and your mom, or
Not that I know of.
did they have any disagreements, or, I mean, was there anything
Like, I think they would argue.
other than normal
Yeah.
parent?
Not that I know of.
Watch Zachary's tone as he describes this.
Those are the same pants you were wearing?
Yeah, sure.
That's the same shirt you were wearing?
No, sure.
Where's the shirt you were wearing?
I threw it away.
Why'd you get rid of that shirt?
It had pieces of my mother's brain stuck to it.
Sheesh. Then came another nail to the cross regarding the serial killer copycat theory. On the day of the murder, Zach was reading Stephen King's Misery. This is a horror story where the central character goes on a murder spree using an axe. In the movie adaptation, she uses a sledgehammer. Sound familiar?
Are you sure you didn't get any of your thought process from from that book?
Yeah, sure.
So,
You're saying
so do you think, so you're saying that's strictly coincidence?
Yes, sir.
Finally, the second detective stepped in.
Zach, I'm sorry. We've been doing this a long time, and I mean, sledgehammer is a very unusual weapon to kill somebody with.
His only answer?
I ordered used denier, but I was working that in this vital area.
A quick search of Zach's phone revealed that he had 2 apps, one about serial killers and one about torture devices. He also had a myriad of gory images saved on his phone and computer, and bookmarked websites on famous murders, Louisville Chainsaw Murder and Nevada Tan included. He also bookmarked an article on understanding schizophrenia. Perhaps that was the part of him that really wanted help. But the other part, well, it wrote things like this: hanging over the masses like a shadow or a dark cloud, executing them all one by one without a sound, omnipresent and biding its time, ready to steal you away at your prime. Welcome to the stupid and the bold, not following any pattern, just doing as told. Laying to rest kings, queens, peasants, and thrall, death will eventually punish us all. His only regret?
I might kill Josh with a sledgehammer too.
Do you still want to kill Josh?
Yes.
And you're not going to tell me why?
Yes, sir.
I'm really curious as to why. I mean, you said that he was the only confidant you had. You didn't talk to anybody else. Why would you want to get rid of the only person that you confide in and talk to?
I don't know.
Did Zach hate Josh for protecting him? Did he feel as vulnerable as the little brother? Finally, detectives addressed the elephant in the room.
Let me ask you this. Do you always talk like you're talking to us now?
Yes, sir.
So if I talk to someone that knows you or a teacher, they're going to say, this is your demeanor. This is how you talk.
Most likely.
So you're always monotone and robotic when you talk.
Yes, sir.
What about any emotion?
You ever laugh?
Sometimes
What makes you laugh?
various things.
Various things.
Give me an example.
While I was laughing myself when I killed my mother.
You were what?
I was laughing when I killed my mother.
What?
Were you laughing your ass off at that time?
Yes, sir.
Paradoxical laughter, laughing in really inappropriate situations, can occur in people with schizophrenia, so Zach might not be lying there. However, Zachary did not laugh at all during the interrogation. He really wanted to appear devoid of emotion and evil. But when the cop pressed and pressed Zach about a motive, he suddenly claimed his older brother sexually assaulted him a few years back.
What did he do to you?
We should definitely arrive at Tennessee.
How long ago was that cut? How long you been in Tennessee?
Since 2008, I think.
This allegation was never proven to be true, and there was no evidence to back that up. Needless to say, Josh vehemently denied this claim, and the whole family said there were no signs of this ever happening. This could either be Zach inventing a story to get out of questioning, or a real consequence of his schizophrenia. Sometimes paranoid schizophrenia will create a real impression of something false happening. In a word, delusions. It's likely Zach truly believed what he was saying, or he was just toying with the detective. Did Zach have any emotion when he thought about his future sentence?
I don't think it would really matter. Because if you give them the death sentence, they'll die, and if you give them a life sentence, they'll die in prison anyway.
The interrogation was concluded, but for his own amusement, the detective asked him one last question. That's when he got emotion, for the first and only time from Zach.
Do you always look at people through your eyebrows?
I don't know.
You've been doing it all morning. Do you do that? Is that a habit, or is that something that you're just started to do?
I guess it's a habit. I've never really noticed.
You never really noticed?
No, sir.
Nobody's ever said anything to you about it?
No, sir.
Why'd you giggle?
It's just...
And there it goes again.
I'm not picking on you, I'm just... It looks kind of evil when you do that, I'm gonna have to say. I think you know you're doing it. And you're smiling about it, so I think you're pretty aware of what you're doing.
No, I didn't realize I was doing it.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, he did. To Zach, evil was a compliment. During Zachary's trial, one question was at the center. Did he have the mental capacity to use reflection and judgment? In other words, was he or his mental illness responsible for premeditated murder? Zach would tell one psychiatrist that the voice of his father dictated that he killed his mother. Then, during his trial, he took the stand and made a shocking claim that Josh killed their brother and that Zach was just covering for his big brother. Yeah. It's surprising even to think Zach believed he could pull that off. His DNA was all over the sledgehammer. He'd even carved a special coded alphabet into the sledgehammer, bearing his initials on it. The police had notes from his journal, a note written after the murder, and a full confession on tape. Imagine being in Josh's position. Your brother killed your mother, set fire to the house, tried to kill you too, and now he's trying to frame you for the murder. Even Zach's defense attorney was shocked. He openly admitted to the court that his client killed his mother. All the defense team could do now was try to get a more lenient sentence for Zach, citing his mental health issues. But Zach's schizophrenia or depression could not be used as arguments. Zach simply didn't give his psychiatrists enough for them to agree on a verdict. Judge D. David Gay told Zach, "You become evil, Mr. Davis. You went to the dark side. It's that plain and simple." He sentenced Zach to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 51 years. Later, it was upped by 20 years for the attempted murder of Josh. Later on, Zach had an interview with Dr. Phil, and there he stated a brand new reason.
Did you kill your mother?
Yeah.
And why did you kill her?
She wasn't taking care of my family.
And so because she wasn't taking care of you and your family, you decided to kill her.
Using little words, Zach seemed to shed a little more light on his motive. According to Josh, Melanie was taking care of the family, but Zach felt differently.
Do you want help?
Yes.
I think you need a lot of help. I think your thinking is way off.
Dr. Phil made an important remark here.
You've shown a lot of signs of needing help along the way, and nobody's ever given it to you. Nobody's ever really stepped up and said, you're not feeling right, you're not acting right, you need some help. I look in your eyes, I don't see evil, I see lost.
Yep, Zach's attorney Randy felt the same way. Any one person that encountered Zach, teachers, neighbors, immediate family, knew something was deeply wrong. His school knew, his mother knew, but nothing was done. Zach's obsession with serial killers and his attempt to detach himself emotionally is not funny. It's actually a tragic story. Zach was so affected by his father's death that his already concerning tendencies were turned into debilitating mental illness. Then there were 1,000 red flags, but none of them were taken seriously enough. Had he seen a single psychiatrist consistently, or had someone address his problems in a different way, perhaps Melanie would still be alive today, and he would be in a much better place too. Zachary Davis is a tragic story about misfortune, unaddressed red flags, and severe mental illness. It's made even more tragic by the fact that it could have gone so many different ways. Thanks for watching, you guys. What are your thoughts on this case? Let me know in the comment section, and hey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click that bell button. See you next time, and stay safe.